The Apache woman hunted the cowboy in the lonely woods, then chose him as her husband. The forest was quiet, except for the gentle rustling of leaves as a cool morning breeze moved through the trees. Birds were waking, singing their songs, and somewhere in the distance, the faint sound of a stream gurgled over rocks. In this peaceful wilderness, life went on in its own rhythm, untouched by towns or cities. Among the trees moved a figure so silent that even the birds seemed to notice her. She was Nayeli, a young Apache woman, strong and skilled, her eyes sharp and alert. She had grown up in the forests and plains, learning the ways of the land from her family. She could read the tracks of animals, tell the direction of the wind, and move without making a sound. The forest was her home, and she belonged to it in a way most people never could. Today, Nayeli was on a mission. She had heard whispers of a stranger, a cowboy, riding through these woods. He was said to be tall, with broad shoulders, and brave, though perhaps not as clever as someone who had grown up in the wild. Her curiosity was piqued. She didn't know much about this man, but something about him drew her attention. Perhaps it was the way he moved, confident yet unaware of his surroundings. Perhaps it was the idea that someone from outside could survive here at all. As she crept through the underbrush, Nayeli observed the signs of his passage. Broken twigs, the faint hoofprints of his horse, a bit of disturbed soil where he had stopped for a moment. These small details told her everything she needed to know. She moved with patience, never rushing, never revealing herself. The thrill of the hunt, though not meant to harm, filled her with energy. Thomas, the cowboy, had no idea he was being watched. He was used to the open plains, where threats were easier to see and avoid. The forest, with its dense trees and hidden trails, was unfamiliar to him, and yet he moved with the confidence of a man who believed he could handle whatever came his way. His horse, a strong brown stallion, trotted carefully over roots and rocks. Thomas scanned the surroundings but saw nothing unusual, only the beauty of the forest around him. Nayeli smiled to herself as she watched him. There was a quiet excitement in following someone who didn't know they were being tracked. She moved like a shadow, barely making a sound, blending into the leaves and trees. Every now and then she would stop to observe him from a hidden spot, noting how he handled the horse, how he reacted to sudden noises, and even how he paused to rest. These details told her who he was, even without words. The days passed, and Nayeli continued her silent observation. She found that Thomas was careful, but not as cautious as he should have been in the forest. He often underestimated the dangers that surrounded him. Sometimes he would wander off the trail, searching for a better path or a clear spot to rest. Nayeli saw these moments as opportunities to test her own skills, to see how much she could remain unseen. One morning, Thomas stopped near a small stream. He dismounted and let the horse drink, wiping his brow as he rested. The sun sparkled on the water, and the sound of the stream was soothing. Nayeli stayed hidden behind a thick cluster of trees, studying him. She noticed the way he looked at the forest, sometimes with admiration, sometimes with caution. There was a kindness in his eyes, a respect for the land, even if he didn't fully understand it. Curiosity began to mix with something more. Nayeli found herself wondering what his life had been like before the forest. She imagined the towns he had seen, the people he had known, and how different it must have been from her own life. She wondered if he had ever faced true danger, the kind that the forest could give, where a single mistake could mean serious trouble. And yet, she also sensed a certain bravery in him, a determination that not everyone possessed. As she continued to follow him, Nayeli thought about the balance of nature and how humans fit into it. She had learned from her elders that every action had a consequence, and that the forest did not forgive mistakes. She was careful, respectful, and deliberate. The forest had been her teacher, and it had made her wise beyond her years. She felt a strange connection to Thomas, even though they had never spoken. He was a visitor here, and yet he had a way of moving that was cautious and aware, showing that he was learning, even if slowly. Thomas, meanwhile, had begun to sense that he was not alone. Occasionally, he thought he saw movement out of the corner of his eye or heard a twig snap when no animal seemed near. He would stop, listen, and then continue, trying to remain calm. There was a tension building inside him, a feeling that something or someone was observing him. Yet he also felt a strange curiosity. He didn't feel fear. He felt intrigued, as if the forest itself was alive and watching him, and he was part of its story. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, the forest turned golden and quiet. Thomas set up camp near a small clearing. He built a fire carefully, using dry branches he had collected, and prepared his meal. Naomi watched from a distance, hidden by shadows. The smell of the fire drifted through the trees, carrying warmth and the promise of safety. She could see him relax, letting his guard down in a way that was rare for a man alone in the wilderness. That night, as Thomas lay under the stars, listening to the sounds of the forest, Naomi stayed hidden but close. She realized that her interest in him had grown beyond curiosity. There was something in his presence that drew her in, something gentle, respectful, and steady. She thought about how unusual it was for someone to survive here without fully understanding the land, and yet he did. She admired that, and it made her feel a connection that was new and unfamiliar. Days turned into a week, and Naomi continued to observe Thomas. Each day brought small discoveries: the way he handled challenges, the kindness he showed to his horse, the thoughtfulness in his movements. She began to think of him less as a stranger and more as a companion in this shared space. There was no rush, no pressure, just a careful, deliberate observation that slowly turned into a quiet respect. By the end of this first week, something had shifted in Naomi's mind. What began as a silent hunt, a test of skill and patience, had grown into something deeper. She understood that the forest had brought them together in a way neither had expected. Thomas was not just a visitor. He was someone who could potentially become part of her world if trust and respect continued to grow. As the morning sun rose again, Naomi watched him mount his horse and continue down the trail. She felt a small tug of anticipation, a desire to see how his journey would unfold. The forest had many lessons still to teach him, and she would be there, silent but present, observing and guiding in subtle ways. She smiled to herself, knowing that this was only the beginning of a story that neither of them could yet fully imagine. The forest held its quiet magic, the kind that could turn strangers into allies, curiosity into understanding, and observation into connection. Naomi knew that the days ahead would test both of them, but for now, she was content to watch, to learn, and to prepare for whatever might come next. The cowboy had entered her world, and the world of the forest would never be the same again. The days that followed were filled with quiet tension and careful observation. Naomi moved through the forest as silently as the wind, her eyes sharp for the slightest hint of movement. She had been tracking Thomas for some time now, and each day she noticed more about him. His habits, the way he reacted to the forest, even the small gestures he made without realizing it. It fascinated her how someone so unfamiliar with the woods could survive, and yet he did so with determination and a certain confidence that impressed her. Thomas, for his part, was beginning to feel a strange sense of being followed. At first, it was just small things, a rustle in the leaves that he thought was a bird, a shadow that disappeared before he could look directly at it. He had spent enough time in the wild to know when danger was near, and his instincts told him that someone or something was observing him. Yet, instead of fear, he felt curiosity. He wanted to understand who or what was there. The idea of the unknown intrigued him, even as it made him cautious. One afternoon, as the sun climbed high in the sky, Thomas decided to take a break near a small hill where the forest opened into a clearing. He dismounted from his horse and leaned against a tree, closing his eyes for a moment to enjoy the warmth of the sun. The forest around him was alive. The birds sang, the leaves rustled, and somewhere nearby, a deer cautiously moved through the underbrush. He breathed deeply, feeling the calmness of the place, unaware that eyes were watching him from the shadows. Nayeli observed him from a distance, crouched behind a thick cluster of bushes. She was careful not to make any noise that could give away her presence. She noticed the way he relaxed, how he closed his eyes, and how his body language softened when he thought he was alone. It told her much about him, that he was a man capable of calm, of thoughtfulness, of awareness. But she also noticed the little mistakes he made, like leaving his horse tied too close to a patch of thorny bushes or brushing away insects without checking the ground. It was clear that while he had courage, he lacked some of the knowledge needed to fully survive in the forest. The afternoon passed slowly. Nayeli stayed hidden, moving only when necessary to remain unseen. She watched as Thomas prepared a small meal over a fire he carefully built, using techniques she recognized but that a stranger would rarely get right. He was skilled in his own way, and she admired that. Even though he was unaware of her presence, she felt a strange respect for him. Here was a man from another world, trying to live and survive in a place so different from the one he knew. As the sun began to descend, casting long shadows across the forest floor, Nayeli noticed something that made her pulse quicken. Thomas had wandered too close to a steep incline without realizing it. One wrong step could send him tumbling down the slope. She felt a pull in her chest, a mix of concern and responsibility. Her instincts screamed at her to stay hidden, to continue watching, but another part of her knew that she could not let him get hurt. She weighed her options carefully, knowing that any sudden action could reveal her presence completely. With careful steps, she moved closer, making sure to remain behind cover. She observed Thomas more closely, noting the way he tested the ground with each step, his eyes scanning for danger but not seeing the cliff just ahead. Nayeli knew she had to act subtly. A small noise might startle him into moving safely away, or she could create a small distraction to guide him without revealing herself. She decided on the latter. She picked up a fallen branch and tossed it lightly onto a rock a few feet away from Thomas. The sharp crack echoed through the clearing, and Thomas jumped back instinctively, glancing around. His hand went to the gun at his side, but he quickly realized there was nothing there. He frowned, scanning the area with careful eyes. "Hello," he called softly, though his voice carried no real hope of an answer. The forest remained silent. Nayeli held her breath, watching him adjust his position and move safely away from the incline. A small smile appeared on her face. She had guided him without him realizing it, and he was unharmed. The thrill of her skill gave her a quiet satisfaction, though she remained hidden, refusing to be seen. There was something exciting in the control, in the ability to affect his path without revealing herself. Over the next few days, the pattern continued. Nayeli would track him from a distance, observing, guiding, and testing him. Thomas began to notice patterns, sensing that someone, or something, was present but never able to catch a glimpse. He became more alert, more thoughtful, adjusting his steps and actions with a growing awareness that he was not alone. This only increased Nayeli's interest in him. She could see the intelligence in his reactions, the way he adapted to the unknown. It impressed her more than anything she had seen before. One morning, Thomas faced a small but dangerous challenge. A sudden rainstorm had turned the ground slippery, and the small stream he was about to cross had risen slightly. He hesitated, studying the rocks and the flow of water, trying to find the safest path. Nayeli, hidden in the nearby trees, could see that a misstep would send him tumbling. She felt the familiar pull in her chest, the mix of excitement and concern. She stayed still, waiting to see if he would make the right choice. Thomas moved carefully, testing each rock before stepping, He almost slipped at one point but caught himself, breathing heavily as he steadied his balance. Naeli felt a surge of admiration for him. Here was a man who was not perfect, who made mistakes, but who also learned from them quickly and adapted with skill. It was rare to see someone so determined and capable, especially someone from outside the forest. By the time the rain stopped, Thomas had crossed safely. He set up a small shelter to dry his clothes and waited for the sun to warm him again. Naeli watched from a distance, her respect for him growing each day. She realized that what had started as a simple curiosity had now become something more complex. She was no longer just tracking a stranger. She was watching someone she could admire, someone who could become more than a stranger if fate allowed it. As the days turned into a week, Thomas and Naeli's unspoken game of observation continued. He began leaving small signs, whether intentionally or not, that hinted at his awareness of being watched. A branch moved slightly, a whistle to signal a bird, a pause in his step as if sensing eyes on him. Naeli noticed, smiling quietly to herself. The forest had become a place of subtle communication, a dance between hunter and watched, between curiosity and skill. One evening, as the sun dipped low and the sky turned shades of pink and orange, Thomas stopped near a small clearing filled with wildflowers. He dismounted and knelt to examine them, the soft petals brushing against his fingers. Naeli watched from a distance, captivated by the gentleness he showed. He was strong and brave, yes, but there was also a softness, a careful consideration in the way he moved and acted. It made her heart stir in ways she did not fully understand. That night, as Thomas built a small fire and settled down under the stars, Naeli stayed hidden in the trees above. She thought about how strange it was that someone could feel so familiar even after only a short time. She considered the lessons she had learned in the forest, the wisdom passed down from her elders, and how they now guided her actions. She realized that this was more than a simple chase or observation. It was the beginning of something new, something neither of them could yet name. The forest, with its quiet whispers and gentle rustling leaves, had become a shared world for them both. Naeli felt a growing connection to the cowboy she had once simply observed. Each day brought new challenges, new lessons, and new moments that brought them closer, even without words. She understood that patience and care were key, and that the forest itself would reveal the path forward if they both respected it. As dawn broke once more, Naeli watched Thomas ride further into the woods, his figure strong against the rising sun. She knew that the days ahead would bring even greater challenges and closer encounters. The thrill of the hunt had transformed into a quiet fascination, a desire to understand him more deeply, and perhaps to guide him gently through the wilderness. The forest held many secrets, but for now, it held one extraordinary connection that neither of them could yet explain. The forest had grown quieter in the early hours of the morning, with only the soft chirping of birds and the occasional rustle of leaves breaking the silence. Naeli moved with her usual care, her senses attuned to every sound, every movement. For days, she had been following Thomas, observing him as he adapted to the forest's hidden dangers. But today felt different. Something in the air, in the weight of the shadows and the smell of wet earth, told her that an event was about to unfold, an event that would test both of their courage and skill. Thomas rode his horse carefully along a narrow trail, the morning fog curling around the trees like a quiet ghost. He had grown more confident in the forest, learning to anticipate sudden changes in the terrain, to watch for hazards hidden beneath the leaves, and to respect the unknown. Yet, despite his growing awareness, the forest was vast, unpredictable, and unforgiving. He paused at a small clearing, listening to the sound of the stream nearby, and allowed his horse to drink. The gentle gurgle of water seemed peaceful, but Naeli, watching from a distance, noticed the danger he did not. A part of the clearing was slick with wet leaves, and a hidden ravine ran just beyond the stream. One misstep, one poorly placed hoof, and Thomas could have been seriously hurt. Nayeli's pulse quickened. She had never intended to intervene directly. Her purpose had been observation, learning, and testing her own skill in remaining unseen. Yet now, as she watched him unknowingly approach the edge, she realized she could not simply stand by. The instinct to protect, to act, overrode her caution. She moved swiftly but silently, staying hidden behind a thick clump of trees. Her heart pounded as she considered how to help him without revealing herself too soon. She could shout, but that might startle him dangerously. She could throw a small stone to redirect his path, but it had to be precise. Every decision mattered, and the weight of responsibility pressed heavily on her. She took a deep breath, steadying herself. Then, with careful precision, she kicked a small branch just enough to tumble it toward a safe path. The branch landed with a soft snap, rolling gently across the clearing. Thomas froze mid-step, his eyes scanning the forest. He saw the branch and instinctively adjusted his footing, stepping carefully away from the ravine. His horse shifted nervously, sensing his tension. Thomas shook his head, unsure whether he had imagined the movement or if it had been real. "Something's here," he whispered to himself, his voice low but steady. He looked around, trying to find the source, but saw nothing. Nayeli, crouched behind the trees, allowed herself a quiet sigh of relief. He was safe for now, and she had acted without exposing herself. The day continued with a mix of caution and curiosity. Thomas pressed on, more alert than ever, adjusting his movements with subtle care. Nayeli stayed nearby, observing how he responded to the forest's challenges. She noticed the intelligence in his decisions, the way he assessed risks, and the patience he showed in navigating tricky terrain. There was a strength in him that went beyond physical ability. It was a quiet courage, a thoughtfulness that made her admiration grow. But the forest was not done testing him. Later that afternoon, as Thomas descended a narrow path near a steep hill, his horse slipped on loose soil. Thomas tried to steady the animal, but the slope was too steep. The horse's hooves skidded, and Thomas lost balance, tumbling down a short distance and landing with a painful thud against a patch of rocks. Pain shot through his leg and he gasped, realizing he could not get up quickly. His horse, startled, bolted down the trail, leaving him alone and vulnerable. Nayeli's heart raced. She moved quickly, leaping over rocks and fallen logs, her mind focused entirely on getting to him safely. The chase was no longer playful or cautious. It was urgent. She arrived just as Thomas tried to rise, wincing in pain. His leg was twisted awkwardly and he could not stand on it. "Are you hurt?" she asked softly, revealing herself for the first time. Her voice was calm but firm, carrying authority and care. Thomas looked up, startled, his eyes widening at the sight of the young Apache woman who had been following him all this time. I think so," he replied, struggling to catch his breath. "My leg, I can't get up." Nayeli quickly assessed the situation. She could see that he had not broken the leg, but it was sprained badly, and he needed support. She extended her hand to him, a silent offer of help. Thomas hesitated for a moment, unsure whether to trust this stranger who had remained invisible for days, but he saw the genuine concern in her eyes. Slowly, he took her hand, allowing her to help him to a safer spot. She guided him gently, supporting his weight as they moved to a flatter area where he could rest. She retrieved some dry leaves and branches, carefully creating a makeshift cushion for him to sit on. Then she used a piece of cloth from her pack to wrap his leg securely, reducing swelling and providing stability. Throughout the process, Thomas remained quiet, impressed by her skill and her calm, assured presence. He had encountered many people in his life, but none who moved through the world with such quiet confidence and mastery. Once his leg was secure, Nayeli led him to a small stream nearby. She encouraged him to drink water and eat a little of the food she had brought with her. Thomas accepted, realizing that he owed his safety entirely to her knowledge and skill. As he rested, he looked at her more closely, noting the way her eyes reflected intelligence, courage, and kindness. There was a strength about her that went beyond physical ability. It was a presence that commanded respect without demanding it. For Naeli, this moment was a turning point as well. She had watched him for days, silently assessing his abilities and character. But now, having helped him in a time of real danger, she felt a connection that was deeper than curiosity. She saw not just a stranger in the forest, but someone worthy of trust and care. Something in her chest shifted, a mix of respect, admiration, and an emotion she did not fully understand yet. Thomas, for his part, felt a gratitude he had never known before. He had survived in the forest through his own skills and determination, but it was Naeli's intervention that had truly saved him. He realized that she was no ordinary person. Her understanding of the land, her quiet strength, and her ability to act decisively had changed the course of his journey. He wanted to speak, to thank her properly, but found words insufficient for the depth of his appreciation. Instead, he simply nodded, allowing the silence to convey his gratitude. The rest of the day passed with a careful, quiet companionship. Naeli stayed close, offering assistance when necessary, while Thomas rested and regained some strength. They spoke sparingly, their conversation simple but meaningful. She asked questions about his life outside the forest, and he listened with interest as she shared some of her own experiences, carefully choosing what to reveal. Each exchange built trust, slowly bridging the gap between hunter and hunted, observer and observed. As evening approached, the sun dipped low, casting golden light across the forest. Thomas felt a sense of safety he had not experienced in days. Naeli had not only saved him physically, but she had also provided a reassurance that calmed his mind. He realized that she was someone he could rely on, someone whose judgment and skill he respected deeply. For the first time, he felt that he was not just surviving in the forest, but learning to belong in it alongside her. Naeli, watching him as he settled by the fire she had helped him build, felt a quiet satisfaction. She had acted according to her instincts, guided by her knowledge and wisdom, and the outcome had been positive. But more than that, she sensed a new beginning, a possibility for trust, understanding, and perhaps even something more. The forest, which had been their silent teacher, had guided them to this moment, revealing not only danger and challenge, but also connection and hope. As the stars began to twinkle overhead, Naeli remained vigilant, but not with the same intensity as before. She felt a calm assurance that Thomas was safe and capable, and that they could face the challenges ahead together. The dynamic had shifted. What began as a game of observation had transformed into a partnership, founded on respect, skill, and the shared experience of surviving in the wilderness. For Thomas, the realization was equally profound. He had come to the forest as a lone traveler, confident in his abilities but unaware of the true dangers around him. Now, he understood that survival was not just about skill. It was about connection, trust, and learning from those who knew the land better than he did. Naeli had become more than a mysterious figure in the woods. She had become a guide, a protector, and someone he could rely on in ways he had never imagined. The forest, once a place of tension and uncertainty, had transformed into a space of mutual respect and emerging trust. The challenges they faced together had brought them closer, laying the groundwork for a deeper bond. Both understood that this was only the beginning, that many more trials awaited, but the foundation of trust and care had been firmly established. And so, under the quiet canopy of the forest and the gentle light of the stars, Naeli and Thomas sat together, connected by circumstance, respect, and the unspoken understanding that something extraordinary was beginning to grow between them. The days that followed Thomas's accident were filled with quiet companionship and careful attention. Nayeli stayed close, helping him regain his strength while continuing to observe his movements and responses to the forest around them. Her role had changed. She was no longer just a silent observer or a distant protector. She had become a guide, a partner in survival, and someone Thomas could trust completely. Thomas, despite the pain in his leg, was determined to continue his journey through the forest. He realized that he could not rely entirely on Nayeli's guidance forever. He had to learn to grow and to understand the land for himself. But with her by his side, he felt a confidence he had never felt before. He watched her carefully, noticing the way she moved, how she read the terrain, and the small gestures she made to maintain safety and balance. Every action was deliberate, every movement purposeful. Nayeli, for her part, observed him with a mixture of pride and caution. He was learning quickly, adapting to the challenges of the forest with a determination that impressed her. Yet, she also knew the dangers were not over. The forest could be unforgiving, and one misstep could undo all the progress he had made. She continued to teach him subtly, showing him which plants were safe to eat, how to find water, and how to read the tracks of animals and other travelers. One morning, as the sun rose over the horizon and mist lingered in the trees, Thomas attempted to navigate a narrow path near a rocky slope. Nayeli walked beside him, her hand lightly resting on his arm for support. The path was treacherous, with loose stones and hidden roots that could easily trip him. Thomas moved cautiously, listening to her instructions and observing her example. "Step here," she said softly, pointing to a stable patch of ground. "Hold your weight steady and don't rush." Thomas nodded, following her guidance carefully. He felt a growing sense of trust in her knowledge and an appreciation for her patience. Nayeli did not scold or rush him. She guided him gently, allowing him to make decisions while providing support. The balance between independence and assistance was delicate, and she managed it perfectly. As they moved together, the bond between them deepened, unspoken but undeniable. Over the next few days, Thomas began to learn more than just survival skills. He began to understand the rhythms of the forest, the patterns of animals, the whispers of the wind, and the quiet signals in the environment that indicated danger or opportunity. Nayeli watched with satisfaction as he grew more confident, adapting his previous knowledge as a cowboy to the challenges of the forest. She realized that he was not just learning survival, he was beginning to understand the forest itself. One afternoon, they came across a small clearing where wild berries grew in abundance. Thomas smiled as he knelt to pick a few, careful not to damage the plants. Nayeli observed him, noting the care and respect he showed for the land. "Do you know which ones are safe?" she asked softly. Thomas nodded. "I think so, but I'll follow your lead," he replied. Together they gathered the berries, sharing the small bounty as a simple meal. It was a quiet moment, yet it felt significant. They were no longer merely surviving. They were learning to live in harmony with the forest. As the days passed, Thomas's leg healed slowly but steadily. He began to walk without as much reliance on Nayeli, testing his strength and endurance. Nayeli, in turn, allowed him space to challenge himself, always nearby to intervene if necessary. Their relationship evolved naturally, built on trust, mutual respect, and shared experiences. The forest, which had once been a place of danger and isolation, had become a space of learning, connection, and understanding. One evening, as the sun set and painted the sky in shades of orange and pink, Thomas and Nayeli came across a small river. The water was clear and cool, reflecting the colors of the sky above. Thomas knelt to drink, dipping his hands into the flowing stream, while Nayeli stayed close, keeping watch for any signs of danger. "This place," Thomas said quietly, "it's beautiful." "I've never seen anything like it," Nayeli smiled, appreciating his wonder. "The forest has its own life," she replied. "It shows its beauty to those who respect it." That night they set up camp near the riverbank. Naeli built a fire, careful to shield it from the wind and to keep the smoke low. Thomas helped, bringing branches and arranging stones for safety. The rhythm of the camp was comforting, a small sense of normalcy in a world that had once been wild and unpredictable. As they sat by the fire, sharing a quiet meal, Thomas felt a warmth that went beyond the firelight. Naeli's presence, steady and reassuring, made him feel safe, valued, and understood. As the days turned into weeks, Thomas and Naeli faced new challenges together. Storms came suddenly, with rain and wind that tested their shelter and their ability to move through the forest. Wild animals appeared occasionally, and unexpected obstacles forced them to adapt quickly. Through it all, Naeli remained a steady guide, teaching Thomas how to anticipate problems, make quick decisions, and remain calm under pressure. He learned to rely on her knowledge, while she learned to trust his judgment and courage. Their bond grew stronger with each passing day. There were moments of shared laughter, as when Thomas struggled to light a fire or misidentified a plant, and moments of quiet reflection, as when they watched the sun rise or listened to the river flow. They began to understand each other not only as companions but as equals, each bringing unique strengths to their partnership. The forest had transformed them, shaping a connection that was deeper than mere survival. One afternoon, as they rested under a large oak tree, Thomas looked at Naeli with a seriousness that made her pause. "I never thought I would meet someone like you in these woods," he said. "Someone so capable, so wise." "I owe my life to you, Naeli." She met his gaze, her expression calm but thoughtful. "You would have learned eventually," she replied softly, "but perhaps not as quickly or as safely. The forest teaches in many ways." Thomas smiled, feeling the truth in her words. He realized that what he had gained was more than survival skills. He had gained understanding, respect, and a companion whose presence made the forest feel less lonely, less dangerous, and more like home. Naeli, in turn, felt a warmth she had not expected. She had chosen to help him, and in doing so, had discovered a connection that went beyond curiosity or duty. It was trust, respect, and a budding admiration that neither of them had anticipated. As the weeks continued, they worked together to move deeper into the forest, learning to navigate its hidden trails, abundant wildlife, and unpredictable weather. They shared knowledge, stories, and small joys, finding comfort in each other's presence. Naeli taught Thomas the subtle signs of approaching weather, the habits of forest animals, and how to move without leaving traces. Thomas contributed his experience as a cowboy, teaching her practical skills for handling animals and improvising solutions to unexpected problems. Through every challenge, their bond strengthened. They discovered the joy of shared accomplishments, whether it was building a secure shelter, finding a hidden grove of fruit, or simply surviving another day in the unpredictable wilderness. Their relationship, once defined by distance and observation, had transformed into a true partnership. Each had come to rely on the other, not just for survival but for companionship, guidance, and understanding. One quiet evening, as they watched the stars emerge over the forest canopy, Naeli felt a sense of fulfillment she had not known before. She had guided, protected, and taught, but she had also learned from Thomas. His determination, courage, and growing understanding of the forest had impressed her deeply. She realized that this journey, which had begun as a silent pursuit, had become something far more meaningful, a shared experience that had brought two lives together in a way neither could have predicted. Thomas, watching the same stars, felt the same realization. He had entered the forest as a lone traveler, confident in his abilities but unaware of the true challenges he would face. Naeli had not only guided him through danger, but had also shown him a way to connect with the land, to respect it, and to understand it. Beyond that, she had become someone he valued deeply, someone whose presence brought him comfort, strength, and a sense of purpose. As the night deepened, they sat in companionable silence, understanding that the days ahead would bring more challenges, but also more opportunities for growth and connection. The forest had shaped them both, revealing their strengths, testing their limits, and teaching them the value of trust, patience, and partnership. Nayeli and Thomas knew that their journey was far from over, but they also knew that together they could face whatever lay ahead. And so, under the quiet canopy of the forest and the gentle light of the stars, they rested, connected by shared experiences, mutual respect, and a bond that had grown stronger with each passing day. The forest, once a place of tension and uncertainty, had become a space of learning, trust, and a deepening connection that neither of them could have anticipated. The forest had grown calm, bathed in the golden light of the morning sun. Birds sang cheerfully, the leaves rustled softly in the breeze, and the scent of wildflowers filled the air. For Nayeli and Thomas, these days had become a rhythm of life, one built on trust, shared labor, and quiet companionship. But beneath the comfort and routine, both felt a subtle change stirring. Something had shifted between them, a recognition that the bond they had formed was deeper than mere friendship or reliance. Thomas had recovered fully from his accident, his legs strong and steady. He moved through the forest with confidence, guided by the lessons Nayeli had taught him. But his confidence was not the same as before. It was tempered by respect and understanding of the land, and by the quiet admiration he now held for the woman who had taught him so much. Nayeli, meanwhile, observed him with a sense of pride and affection. She had seen his growth, his willingness to learn, and his courage in the face of challenges. She had come to respect him deeply, not only for his strength but for his kindness, patience, and determination. One afternoon, as they traveled along a narrow path beside a flowing river, Thomas paused to rest. He leaned against a large rock, catching his breath while watching the water ripple over smooth stones. Nayeli stood a few feet away, observing him with her usual careful attention. There was a quiet beauty in this moment, a sense of peace and harmony that neither had expected when their paths first crossed in the forest. Thomas turned to her, a thoughtful expression on his face. "Nayeli," he said softly, "I've been thinking about everything we've been through. I came here alone thinking I could handle the forest by myself, but I was wrong. I wouldn't have survived without you, not just your guidance, but everything. You've shown me how to truly see this land, how to move with it, and how to understand it. And more than that, you've shown me something I didn't know I was missing." Nayeli met his gaze, her expression calm yet attentive. She had grown used to his honesty and openness, but there was something different in his tone now, a vulnerability mixed with sincerity that touched her deeply. "We've both learned," she replied softly. "The forest has taught us many things. It has tested us, guided us, and shown us who we are. But it is not just the land that has changed you, Thomas. You have chosen to learn, to grow, and to respect it and me. That matters as much as any skill." Thomas smiled, a warmth spreading across his face. "It does matter. And more than that, Nayeli, I feel like I've found a place here with you. I've learned to survive, but I've also learned what it means to care, to trust, and to share life with someone. You've become more than a guide to me. You've become everything." Nayeli felt a flutter in her chest. She had spent so long observing, testing, and guiding him, but she had never anticipated the depth of feeling that had grown between them. Her admiration had evolved into something more, something powerful, quiet, and undeniable. She realized that she had come to see Thomas not as a stranger or a visitor, but as someone she could trust completely, someone whose presence brought warmth, comfort, and hope. The days that followed were filled with reflection and subtle preparation. Nayeli knew that choosing to share her life with Thomas would be a decision of great importance, one that carried weight not only for her but for her people. She sought guidance in her thoughts, remembering the lessons of her elders about respect, commitment, and the importance of shared understanding. She observed Thomas closely, noting his character, his actions, and the sincerity of his heart. She saw a man who had learned to respect her world, someone willing to adapt, learn, and grow without abandoning who he was. One evening, as the sun dipped low and painted the forest in shades of gold and amber, Naomi invited Thomas to sit with her near a small fire they had built together. The warmth of the flames flickered across their faces, casting a soft glow that highlighted the connection between them. Naomi spoke carefully, choosing her words with thought and intention. "Thomas," she began, "we have shared many days, faced many challenges, and learned much together. The forest has been our teacher, and we have both grown because of it. But there is something I need to say, something I have thought about for a long time." Thomas looked at her intently, sensing the seriousness of her tone. His heart raced slightly, not with fear but with anticipation. "What is it?" he asked softly, his voice steady but full of curiosity. Naomi took a deep breath. "I have watched you, helped you, and shared the forest with you. And in that time I have come to see your heart, your courage, and your respect, not just for the land but for me. I have learned to trust you completely. And because of that trust, I choose you, Thomas. I choose to share my life with you, to stand by your side, and to build a future together." Thomas felt a surge of emotion, a mix of joy, relief, and deep admiration. He reached for her hand, holding it gently in his own. "Naomi, I cannot express how much that means to me. You have given me life, safety, knowledge, and now hope. I choose you as well. I promise to honor you, to respect you, and to share my life with you as long as I live." A quiet calm settled over them, the forest around them seeming to acknowledge the moment. The trees whispered in the gentle breeze, the stream sang softly, and the sky above glowed with the colors of sunset. It was a moment of unity, trust, and love, one that had grown naturally from days of shared experience, mutual respect, and understanding. In the weeks that followed, Naomi and Thomas began to plan a life together. They worked side by side, preparing a small area in the forest where they could live safely, building a shelter with care, and planting food for the future. Each task strengthened their bond, as they relied on each other's knowledge, skill, and insight. The forest, once a place of challenge and danger, had become their home, a place of partnership and shared life. Thomas continued to learn from Naomi, understanding the subtleties of the forest, the habits of animals, and the rhythms of the seasons. Naomi, in turn, came to understand more about Thomas's world, his values, his experiences, and the depth of his heart. Together, they blended their knowledge and skills, creating a life that was stronger and richer because of their partnership. One morning, as they walked along a familiar trail, Naomi spoke softly. "Thomas, the forest has given us so much. It has tested us, taught us, and brought us together. I think it is time we formalize our bond, not just with words, but with our actions, our commitment, and our shared life." Thomas nodded, feeling a deep sense of purpose and joy. "Yes, Naomi, I agree. Let us live together, build together, and honor the life we have found in this forest. I will stand by you, and you will stand by me, through all the days to come." And so, under the open sky, with the forest as their witness, Naomi and Thomas took their first steps into a life together. They celebrated not with grand ceremonies or many people, but with quiet joy, shared work, and the understanding that their bond had been forged through trust, courage, and respect. Each day they strengthened their connection, building a life filled with learning, love, and partnership. The forest, which had once been a place of tension, challenge, and uncertainty, had transformed into a home. The streams, trees, and wildflowers became symbols of their shared life, constant reminders of the journey that had brought them together. Naomi and Thomas moved through the forest side by side, their hearts aligned, their spirits connected, and their lives intertwined. Years passed, and the bond between Naomi and Thomas only grew stronger. They faced challenges together, storms, wild animals, and the unpredictability of life in the forest, but they faced them as one. Their trust, understanding, and love deepened with every shared experience, and their home became a place of warmth, security, and joy. Naomi often reflected on the day she had first followed Thomas through the woods, curious and cautious. She realized that what had started as observation and curiosity had grown into a partnership of mutual respect, trust, and love. Thomas had become her equal, her companion, and her chosen partner for life. Thomas, too, reflected on their journey. He remembered the days of uncertainty and challenge, the times when he had relied on Naomi for guidance and protection. He understood that it was not just her skill that had shaped his survival, but her wisdom, patience, and heart. She had chosen him, and in doing so, she had changed his life forever. Together, they continued to live in the forest, guided by the lessons of the land and the strength of their bond. The story of Naomi and Thomas became one of partnership, love, and respect, proof that connection, trust, and shared experience could transform lives in the most unexpected ways. The forest, once a place of danger and solitude, had become a sanctuary, a home, and a testament to the power of trust, courage, and love. And so, under the endless canopy of trees and the open sky, Naomi and Thomas walked side by side, not just as companions, but as partners in life, their hearts and spirits forever intertwined, bound by the lessons of the forest and the choice to share their lives together.